Welcome to the Private Lenders Podcast with your host from Hard Money Bankers, Jason Balin and Chris Haddon. This podcast is sponsored by hardmoneymastermind.com.
Hey everyone, Chris and Jason here, Private Lenders Podcast. Thank you for checking out the show. Real quick here before we get started, we are having our next Mastermind event, live event here in Maryland. It is Tuesday, June 3rd through Thursday. The big days are mainly June 4th and June 5th, but there's kind of a intro sort of thing happening on Tuesday the 3rd. If you haven't done so already, go check out hardmoneymastermind.com and click on live events. All right, today we're talking about valuations. One, if not the most important aspects of the lending business is to truly know the value of your collateral. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Now, it's okay to get third-party valuations. In fact, they're helpful. They can be good for your file. It's a good thing to do, but you don't rely on them. We're talking about the different ways in which we truly know the value of the collateral.
So think of this like a pyramid, right? The top of the pyramid is like probably the best case stuff that you should be doing. I'm going to go over what those things are, what you should be doing. And then there's a lot of things that kind of fill in the pyramid that, are best practices. You could use them. You cannot use them. Some of that stuff might not be accurate. Some might. But the top level things are going to visit the property, actually putting your eyes on the property, right? Going there, meeting the borrower, confirming the construction that needs to be done, really, really, really understanding the area that the property's in, right? So site visit, MLS, right? So accessing comparables, exactly what the accurate data is of, what is sold recently, how long things have been sitting on the market for, what's active, what's sold. Obviously some areas are very, very easy to do this and some areas aren't, right? You might have a house that's sitting on, side of the road with not many comparables nearby compared to a subdivision that has, a few hundred houses in them and they're all cookie cutter. They look alike and they were built recently. Those, two different variations. And then also potentially picking up the phone and reaching out to a real estate investor that you might be familiar with or know and say, hey, what would you buy this property for cash right now today? In as is condition. And, what do you think if this thing was fully renovated, it would sell for today? Okay. So I'm not necessarily saying, listen, in a perfect world, I think you should be doing all of those things on a regular basis. As you scale, you got to figure out a way to automate that a little bit or have help, have a member of your team. I just want to kind of give you the most conservative approach of like what you should do. And if you're starting out, you should be doing that. You should be lending on assets that you understand, lending in areas that you understand, lending on stuff that you are comfortable with, because ultimately you're controlling the capital. You make the decision of what you want to do and what you don't want to do. So those three are kind of best practices. And the first 5 years of our business, we were at every property. To this day, I'm still on MLS full-time, looking at comps full-time. But like we were, deals that we were kind of uncertain about. We'd reach out to other investors that we knew in the area. Be like, hey, how much would you buy this thing for right now? And they'd be like, yeah, I think I'd probably pay $150 for today, cash, as is condition, sight unseen. It's like, great. Our day one exposure is 100. We're in a good spot, right? So those are kind of the top level things. I'll let you add to that, Chris, if you want, and then I can kind of go through different layers of, things to use as a reference.
Yeah, I have some stuff to chime in on a little bit later on related to commercial properties. But before we get there, I wanted to add in tax record as well.
Yeah, I got that on my list here. Yep.
Oh, that's on your list. I figured it was coming. Yeah, checking out the price history of the property that you might be lending on and also the price history of the comps and the nearby properties, right?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's just fill in kind of other things that you want to use as a tool, as a reference. Some of the stuff might be relevant. Some might not be relevant. But you can look on Zillow, right? I'm not saying Zillow is the top level thing. We already talked about the top three things. What an investor is going to pay for it that if you need to get it off your books, site visit and MLS that you have access to. That's the top important. None of these are relevant or nearly as relevant, but they paint a picture a little bit. Maybe you're working your way up to do it perfectly. So Zillow paints a picture. Some areas Zillow is somewhat good. Some areas it's not as relevant. You could get an appraisal. We don't typically like to get appraisals. I don't really like to do stuff with, they don't really have an economic interest in the deal, right? And I think an appraisal could be valuable in some cases, and that's not a knock on appraisals, and it's not a knock on an appraiser in general. I just think that if you're the one that is making the economic decision if the deal is good or not, you should be doing the heavy lifting and verifying the data and things like that. The one thing that an appraiser doesn't know, or a third party doesn't know, is what's the credit score of the borrower? What's the experience of the borrower? What's their plans with renovations? If all of us renovate a house, we would potentially sell for different prices, right? We all have different backgrounds. We all have different experience levels, right? They don't have a gut feel. You're taking these calls. You're talking to these real estate investors on the phone. You're meeting these real estate investors. You have a profile that you've created of how well can they execute. What are their characteristics? What's their liquidity? What's their cash position? We're constantly lowering and reducing our exposure and reducing our LTVs based on how well we believe the borrower can perform. So that's a hard thing to have an appraiser do, or a BPO agent, or a real estate agent to help you with. So anyways, appraisals, realtors could potentially help you out. Third party BPO providers like Richer Values. I know a lot of people use Richer Values, Aspen. There's a whole school of service providers on that. So there's certainly lots of qualified people that can help you determining the value, but I would just utilize them for their opinions, not necessarily for everything perfectly. Right? If you're going to lend out $100,000 of your own money or investor capital, you don't want to just order an appraisal. And if the appraisal says, hey, it's worth 200, you want to lend off that. That is a bad idea. You don't want to ask one real estate agent and they tell you it's worth 200 grand. That's what you want to base on it. That's a bad idea. You don't want to get a third party valuation through like Richer Values or a BPO agent. They tell you it's worth 200 grand. You say, great. That's a good, or you ask another real estate investor and they say, oh, it's probably worth 200. You need to you need to take all these opinions and make it a little bit more concrete of what you're interested in lending on. So those are all the service providers. And then in the middle, like Chris kind of alluded to earlier, tax records, land records, things like that. Like besides being on MLS all the time, I'm looking at tax records all the time, different jurisdictions. It's a little bit manual labor, right? Because some are easy to look at, some aren't. I'm also looking at land records. Do they have recorded deeds? Do they have recorded deeds of trust? Mortgages. You can get your hands on access to some of that to make sure everything everything's kind of accurate on that. I was looking at this deal earlier today, and the borrower is buying it for like 110, and it traded early last year for like 40. So I'm like, why did this? And I do think that when it traded last year, it's in almost the same condition. Like it was a bang up deal, but like it got me wondering. I want to do a lot of due diligence and a lot of research. I mean, it's just like, think about if you're buying a business, you're buying a stock, you're buying any investment, any asset. Like you're the underwriter. You're making the decision. You determine if it's a good deal or if it's a bad deal, right? And little tangent real quick. If you don't love the deal the way it's structured, just lower it. You don't have to be scared from a borrower if you tell them that, oh yeah, we lend up to 80%. And then you decide, okay, well, this deal's a little bit unusual, or I don't love this, or I can't wrap my head around this, or the comps are bad, and you want to lower your LTV. You can do that. Lower it to where you're comfortable with. Tangent over.
No. That was some really good stuff there. And I want to emphasize one or two things. Like, one, this is what the institutional people miss on real bad when they're doing no kind of valuation other than a third-party appraisal, is exactly what you said about this appraiser doesn't know what this borrower is going to do to the property. They're going to go out and use the top comps, right? The top comps could be, $900K in Northwest DC, for example. And a couple of those were done by a home builder or a very experienced real estate investor who does 100 deals a year, right? And they're selling for 900K. Is your borrower going to do that same job and get that same sales price? Maybe yes, maybe no. It depends on them, how qualified they are, their experience and everything else. It's possible that they'll do the same property in, a good enough job, but not a perfect job. And now you're looking at 825 instead of 900. That stuff happens all the time. And then basing your number off of what you believe that resale price is going to be, not what it could appraise for, but what you reasonably believe how much they can sell this property after they run their game, do their construction job, and exit it. And you base your loan amount on that. And that could make your loan amount go to 500, whereas that appraisal would tell you a safe loan amount 600, right? So we're talking, when you get into those numbers, like we're talking big swings here. And yeah, again, I mean, I just want to emphasize, like, third party stuff is helpful. It's there, it looks good in the file, it makes sense for it to be there. But like, truly, like, this business, underwriting this business, your risk management in this kind of game is to truly yourself know the value of the property, and then you can layer on some third party stuff on top.
Yeah, all good things. If you're serious about, and I'm talking about really serious about expanding your private lending company, your hard money lending company, if you've been listening to this podcast for a long period of time, in Maryland, June 4th and 5th, we're doing our next live event. We had to open up a live event in June because our May one was fully booked, and we just got back from our May one, and anyone there can tell you that it was a complete full house. It was well oversubscribed. Like we were over on time, throughout the entire thing. So that's one of the many reasons why we are doing another event, June 4th, June 5th. Near our offices between DC and Baltimore. So if you're serious about private lending or hard money lending, and you've been kind of looking for ways to be involved in this space a little bit more, the majority of the group is anywhere between 2 million, 3 million, and 10 million who will be out there with us. So if you're serious and you're actively lending, definitely check out hardmoneymastermindevent.com, or actually just go to hardmoneymastermind.com and click on live events. These events have turned out to be a lot of fun for Chris and myself, and it's a way to, obviously we have a lot of folks that are following us on this podcast, either the video or the audio version, but multiple times a day we have other lenders reaching out saying, hey, is there anything a little bit more advanced or a little bit more hands-on with either you guys or with other members of the Hard Money Mastermind community? And there's almost 3,000 members of the Hard Money Mastermind community at this point. So that's one of the main reasons we opened up this June event, since the May one had sold out months ago. So June 4th, June 5th, Baltimore, between DC and Baltimore. If you're interested, definitely go to hardmoneymastermind.com/live events. And hopefully, we'll be able to see and chat with a lot more folks, a lot more. I mean, there's so many private and hard money lenders out there doing some really good things these days. And, we've watched so many of them grow. Chris and I were talking about some of the folks in our, that were at our May event, that this was probably like their fourth event. And so maybe they've been around for like 2 years, and, they were at like that 1 to 2, maybe 3 million. And all of them are over 10 million at this point. Some of them are 18 million. One of them is as high as 30 million. So we've really seen some massive growth. And as you know, if you're involved in any business, there's different tiers, right? So in the hard money lending space, it's typically like, first tier is get to like a few $1 million deployed, and then it's to get to like 5 to 10. Because as soon as you get to 10, you need things, 2 or 3 million. You can do this as a one-man operation, spreadsheets, things like that. As soon as you get to like 10, you need a staff member, you need proper loan servicing software, you need some sort of origination portal, proper, a lot of different things. And then the next step after 10 million is typically 25 mil. So a lot of folks that we were just with are really kind of, a lot of them are over 30 at this point, which is crazy, because I think there was only one in the room a few years ago. So it's been awesome to see. So again, just wanted to do a quick shout out to that event, June 4th and 5th, if that interests you. Space is limited. That is upcoming the next few weeks.
Okay, everyone, that is the pod for today. We appreciate you checking out the show. We'll see you on the next episode of the Private Lenders Podcast.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast. Please note that the opinions stated by all the speakers on this show are only opinions and not intended for legal, financial, or accounting advice. Please make sure to always check with your own legal, accounting, and financial professionals. If you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders Podcast, we'd appreciate it if you would spread the word. Make sure to check out hardmoneymastermind.com, the #1 free community for new and experienced private and hard money lenders.